My friends, welcome to this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. I hope you all are doing well. The other day I was on Amazon looking for interesting tents. That's when I came across this. This is a single-walled bivy tent, and there are plenty of tents just like this out on the market. The difference is this. This tent has an interesting feature that I've never seen before. You can see here that this bivy tent has an awning. Again, there's plenty of bivy tents out on the market that have awnings, but none of them have this here. This is an awning extension. Basically, when you unzip this, unzip the door, this folds out, and then you can stake it out, meaning this. Because this tent has that extension, it allows us to keep the awning up even when it's raining. With virtually every bivy tent that's out on the market today that has an awning, as soon as it starts raining, you have to close that awning up. That's because when it's raining, the water will fall straight down and go to the go on the inside of the tent, getting everything wet. With this tent here, because we have this extension panel, it covers the inside of the tent, meaning when it's raining, the inside stays dry. To make sure that the inside of the tent stays dry, you do have to zip up this side. So basically you zip this up, stake it out, and you can leave this side up. Unfortunately, this side does not have an extension panel, which I would love to see in a future version of this tent. With that being said though, with this side zipped up and this side open, you still have a lot of protection and at the same time, a lot of space underneath this awning to do whatever it is that you want to do. You can unzip this inner, put your chair halfway in the tent, halfway out. You can sit here and you can have full protection underneath this awning. The tent that is the subject for this episode is the Onewind backpacking tent for a single person. That's what they call it on Amazon. On their website, this is called the SoloVent Bivy tent. Again, folks, this is a single wall tent. It features one door, a large vent on the backside, a smaller vent on the backside, and on the front you have this large awning here. Before we go to the inside of this tent, I will show you all the different ways that you can set it up. So this is the fully set up with the awning mode. Let's go ahead and lower this side here. This is what I refer to as the storm mode setup. We have the awning extension here, the awning that goes over the top, and it's closed off at the end there. You can see why in storm mode here, why I would want the extended awning on this side. It would offer this tent so much more versatility than what you get here. This is a good start, right? But adding one down at the foot would take this to the next level. Now everyone, let me show you all how the extension panel folds up out of the way. Disconnect the guy lines, put down the pole. You take the extension panel and you fold it in. And from there, you zip it up. This, everyone, is what this tent looks like when the front door is fully shut up. We have storm flaps that go over the zippers. Again, on the back side, we have the two vents, the lower vent and the top vent. Here's a tip for you all. If you're going to be out with this tent here and it's so windy that you have to seal up the front, make sure to stake out the doors, just like this. That way you could pull the fly away from the inner and you will get some airflow underneath that. That will help with condensation. Here we have the front door that is made from solid mesh. We have two-way zippers. And with this panel, you can roll it up and store it out of the way. It should be mentioned that you can roll up and store the fly as well. Inside of the tent here, we have two mesh pockets, one at the head, one at the foot. You can see the large vent behind me. Up here at the top, we have the small vent. And get this, you can access the small vent from the inside of the tent. 98% of the tents out on the market today that have vents do not allow you to do that. But this tent does. It's a smart feature. That way, in the middle of the night, if a storm comes in, it's super windy, you can close that vent from the inside. You do not have to get out and go around. That is smart. Now, when it comes to this smaller vent, you do have to get out to close it. But 99.9% of the time, you wouldn't have to do that. You can leave it open. All right, everyone, I will go ahead and measure this tent for you. The peak height up at the head is 38 inches. Whereas the peak height at the foot is 26. Down at the foot, it is 28 inches wide. And up at the head, it is 34 inches wide. And the tent is 81 inches long, which is 6 feet 9 inches. Those are the usable measurements, not the maximum extended measurements. Now everyone, let's go over some stats concerning this shelter. The price of this is $110 on the Onewind website and on Amazon. This is available in one color and you're looking at it, OD green. The weight, including all of the components and the storage bags, 2.3 pounds. The fly material is made from a 1.1 ounce seal nylon and it features a 3000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. The floor is made from a 40 denier ripstop nylon and it has a 5000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. The mesh that covers the vents is made from polyester. Additionally, we have aluminum stakes. When the tent is stored, it measures 15.8 inches by 9.4 inches by 6.1 inches. The full setup dimensions for this tent, from edge to edge, this tent is 82.7 inches long, 23.6 inches wide, and it has a height of 23.4 inches. Those are the measurements from the company. This is a 3-season tent. It is non-freestanding. This was designed for one person and included, you get the tent, the storage bags for the tent and the tent stakes. You receive 10 tent stakes and 2 additional guy lines, not counting the ones that are attached to the tent, which brings the guy line count up to 7. Now folks, let's go over my impressions of this shelter based upon the one trip out that I've done with it so far. This tent is very much in testing right now, but I thought it was such a cool shelter with such smart features that I figured I'd do a preview and share this with you all. So right off the bat, we have to talk about how lightweight this tent is. And at the same time, the storage size is quite small. You could easily put this inside of your backpack and it does not take up much space. Not only for backpacking, but for hiking purposes too. You know, as far as like an emergency shelter goes, this is an interesting option, that's for sure. Speaking of it being lightweight, you do have to keep in mind that no poles are included with this setup here. You have to provide your own trekking poles or use sticks out of the forest. With that being said, you can see here that this tent is lightweight. It is not ultralight. When you factor in the weight of the poles, the weight goes up substantially. This is without a doubt lightweight, but it's not ultralight. Next everyone, we need to talk about the setup process. Overall, it's fairly simple, but it's a time-consuming process because this tent takes a lot of tent stakes to set it up. Ultimately, you can get this set up in about 10 to 15 minutes. It's not that complicated. If you're setting up the fly, or I should say the awning, it's going to take about 15 minutes. If you're not going to set that up, it takes about 10. Of course, the more comfortable that you get with the setup process, the faster it will be. When talking about the setup process, I do want to mention one thing. When it comes to the bottom of the tent, basically where you're staking the tent to the ground, you will find in each of the corners elastic. Do not use your tent stakes with that elastic. If you do stake it out with the elastic, the tent has a tendency to raise up off of the ground. There are loops in each of the corners that the elastic attaches to. Stake out with those loops instead. That will anchor the tent to the ground and it will prevent it from rising up. Anyways, ultimately the setup process is not too bad. This is of course a trekking pole tent, and for a trekking pole tent they do require a longer setup process. Next everybody, I love the fact that this tent has such a large door. It makes getting into and out of this tent very, very easy. Do keep in mind that this is a low profile bivy tent. Bivy tents are this. They're larger than a traditional bivy and they're smaller than a traditional tent. And that is true with this tent here. This is a one-person tent that is large enough for your sleeping pad, your sleeping bag, and yourself. Inside of this tent, there's not much room for anything else. Because of this, most of the time, you will want the awning to be up. That way you can store your backpack and additional gear on the outside of the tent. Moving on, let's talk about ventilation. Because there's so much mesh, because there's so many vents, the ventilation inside of this tent is excellent. I've spent one night out in this tent so far, and I've had no issues as far as condensation goes. And that's because the airflow, the ventilation is so good. Because this tent has so much airflow to it, it is good for the warmer months. This is a 3-season tent all the way. On the Onewind website, they refer to this as a 3-season tent. On the Amazon page, they call this a 4th season tent, meaning that this tent was designed for cold weather camping. That is simply not true. A 4-season tent does not mean all 4 seasons. It means the wintertime and the wintertime only. Obviously, this is not a good choice for wintertime camping. Of course, you can do it if you want to, but you do have to keep in mind the ventilation and the airflow. This is not a tent that's going to hold in a lot of heat. It's going to do the opposite. It is going to allow a ton of air to go inside of that tent, and there's not much you can do about it. Next, everyone, let's talk about the awning. I love this. This is incredibly smart. For years and years, I've been reviewing bivy tents just like this that have awnings, and I've been saying the same thing. Someone needs to come up with a way to do an extension panel so you can keep this open even when it's raining. Onewind is the first company to have done this, and now that this has been done, be prepared because other companies are going to copy this. You can take this extension panel idea and apply this to a lot of tents. And get this, it doesn't add much weight, it doesn't add much to the cost, and it does offer a ton of protection. Again, I would love to see a new version of this tent with an extension panel down at the foot. That would be sweet. That would offer you a ton of protection, a ton of airflow, and at the same time, a ton of versatility as far as use cases go. As it stands right now, this is very much usable. This is a really good start. And if you're interested in a low profile bivy tent, there is nothing out on the market right now that really competes with this. You can find other tents that have awnings, but as soon as it begins to rain, you have to seal them up. That is not the case with this tent. I have used this tent on one trip so far. During the day, it was light rain on and off. At nighttime, basically the same thing, on and off. At one point in time, some moderate rain fell just enough to kind of soak the outside of the tent and the ground. During those rain events, this tent did not leak at all. The inner to this tent never got wet. Now my plan is to do a full rain test episode, a test night episode with this tent. That is coming up, so stay tuned. Ultimately, we will do a full waterproof test with this tent in heavy rain to ensure that it is waterproof. On paper, it should be. It features a 3,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating for the fly, a 5,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating for the floor. All of the seams are taped. Ultimately, there's no reason why this tent should leak, and I will test it out thoroughly. With this tent being made from a seal nylon, you will experience some material sagging, especially as it gets wet. You can see here with this footage, rain came through basically all day, all night. The next day, there was quite a bit of sagging taking place with this tent. Basically, that means throughout the day, even throughout the night, you may have to make adjustments to this tent to keep it taut. In most cases, it's not going to be a big deal, but if it's windy out, it could be. As the tent sags, the winds are blowing, that extra material will flap, so you have to keep it taut. That is just a con when it comes to seal nylon. Seal nylon is very waterproof. It's also very lightweight, but it sags. Without a doubt, this is a very versatile shelter that you can use for just about any sort of purpose. I'm talking about backpacking, kayaking, bike packing. You could even take this with you on hiking trips just in case of an emergency. There really is a lot that you can do with this shelter. And something else, you could use this for stealth camping purposes. It does have that low profile and the dark earth toned colors, which would work great for that purpose. The only con though, is that you have to stake it out, and it takes a lot of stakes, a lot of guy lines. But ultimately, that's not too big of a deal. That's not too big of a problem. So for stealth camping, this is certainly an interesting option. Let's see here, is there anything else to mention concerning this tent? Yes. No footprint is included with this shelter, so you have to provide your own to protect the bottom of the tent. If you're looking for a good fit with this shelter, I have found that the 3F UL one-person footprint matches up perfectly with this tent, and that footprint is ultralight. This is without a doubt a tent that I'm very eager to continue testing out. I really do like what I see here. I think this is a great first edition of the SoloVent tent. This tent has a lot going for it. There's a lot here that separates it from other bivy style tents. There are plenty of bivy style tents out on the market today. Some are super inexpensive, like 30 bucks. This one here, $110, something like that. But the quality of this looks to be excellent. We're talking about really good materials that are fairly lightweight, and also it has some really smart features that these other tents do not have. I really do like what the company has done with this shelter. They've taken a problem that a lot of tents have, and they have solved it. And they have solved it in a very smart way. And with all of that being said, I am done. Now it's your turn to sound off in the comment section down below. What do you all think about the Onewind SoloVent tent? I love that awning. That is so cool. What the company has done with the awning is very smart and also useful. I do hope, again, that there's a new version of this tent in the future that adds that extension panel to the footbox. But ultimately, we will see what happens. Everyone, take care, be well, strength and honor. Hit the thumbs up before you go. I do appreciate it. Bye for now.